Another live podcast recording, John, coming to everybody on the podcast feed and recorded live in front of a YouTube audience.
We're like Dave Letterman. Didn't he do in front of a live audience?
Absolutely. Everyone. They used to say that all the time in TV, in front of a live studio audience, which no one realized really just meant taped, you know?
Yeah, because it was at like, didn't I got my, it threw me off. I had the YouTube open and then, it's a little delayed and then I hear you in my ear, but I'm looking at you. You're not talking. Letterman, didn't they record at like 5 o'clock?
Might have been even a little earlier.
So he was not there at 11 o'clock at night.
Absolutely not. John, how else was he driving home to hear Hootie and the Blowfish,
That's very, very, very true. I've stumbled upon some Dave that last year. Do you know his favorite song ever was a Foo Fighters song? They sang at his last ever.
They did it at the last show.
Yeah, he loved. His music taste for an older guy was a little unique.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he really... Those guys that really made it big in the early 90s, I wonder if it's because like he was really taking off. Like he really gravitated toward the Whitney Houstons, the Foo Fighters, the Pearl Jams.
I think a lot of those
Darius
guys,
Ruckers.
I think a lot of those guys grew up in Hollywood. Not grew up like at a young age, but like cut their teeth at Hollywood. And
you're saying Letterman?
Yeah, Letterman was like a nightclub comedian, right, in Hollywood with Leno and all those other guys.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
and just were part of that, like, I don't know. I don't think
he appreciated someone from the bottom kind of coming up.
Yeah, and just was, he wasn't listening to the thing he listened to as a kid, because I think when you're in that world, there's always a hot new band, and that singer might be in there in the comedy club with you that night. You know what I mean? I think it just kind of keeps you on the forefront of the trends. He does have he's always was kind of on top of, he never felt old.
For an older guy.
Yeah.
Wasn't his kid named Harry?
His son is named Harry, yeah.
Didn't he have a son when he was like 68 years old?
His son is like 7 when he retired, and that was how long ago?
I mean, a decade? When did he retire? Maybe 5-6 years ago.
I think it's more than
Yeah, you're right. I've stumbled a couple times on like the last week or month lead up, and just some of like, he had Howard Stern and Don Rickles on that last week. It was really funny.
The top 10 with Peyton Manning.
Yeah, he did.
Where each person did one.
Yeah, he was. That was a special time.
Yeah.
There's going to be a generation of people that don't even. I mean, late night TV, it doesn't even exist anymore, really. No. Right? It's really an internet going viral. You were a Dave guy more than Leno, right?
Absolutely. I think I've mentioned this, so I'll keep it tight, but when I was doing the night radio show, I used to get home, show ended at 11 p.m., I'd get home, couldn't sleep, I'd watch Letterman clips on YouTube till 1, 2 a.m. I loved Letterman. I used to stay up for it when I was a kid. I don't know how, have I given you this take? How the world functioned? Like, how were all these people staying up late watching all these late night shows? I think I've given you that take, so, but.
I don't know. Well, I mean, guy, if you live on the East Coast, Monday Night Football starts at 8:15, so.
Yeah.
You're a little more ingrained. I mean, his market was not LA, it was New York. I think they are a little more wired on the East Coast to stay up a little later.
Yeah, maybe.
A little mentally tougher.
But now it's like TB12 would tell you go to bed by 8 and catch the clips tomorrow.
I agree.
All right, don't forget, get your questions in for the mailbag, because we'll do a mailbag this week. The following week is the big draft week. We'll do a live draft stream that week on Thursday night when the Jags are on the clock. Haberman and Middlecoff are on YouTube. Just think of it that way. And then there'll probably be a Friday stream and maybe a Saturday stream and a Sunday stream. So it's going to be, as they say in the urine business, a steady stream, John. A real thick, steady, strong stream. So
think of when Andy Dufresne came out the pipes, right? And just it was flowing. Think of that. Woof. Just poop.
Just covered in the sewage. But get your mailbag questions in. You go to iTunes. You leave us a review 5 stars. That's how you get in the mailbag. What else can we promote here?
We got that, the YouTube channel. Our friends at wineaccess.com/ham. Go check that out. We'll get into that a little bit later.
You and I just sent out a big shipment on wineaccess.com/ham.
Yeah, we're trying to do some business with some business partners, And what about the apparel business we're diving into, guy?
You know what? For the podcast listeners, they will go to Instagram to see this, but where's our guy? Here we go. On the YouTube, Matt Fox. Oh, I got to share this with you so you can see it all. says, "Are the hats officially for sale?" So why don't you continue on with what you were going to say right there?
So we got these hats. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see a little promo code HAM. If you're listening on the podcast, it's pretty easy. You just go to one of our Instagram pages. That's this little app where you throw pictures up and you throw stories up. At Guy Haberman, at John Middlecop, just our names. Very, very easy. And you can see the pictures of the hats. So the trucker hats that Kyle Shanahan wore the Super Bowl year.
Some would call them the Shanahan hat. That's what some people are calling them. Not me, just some people.
So get on it right now.
$25 shipped. That's the deal. So free shipping. $25 all in.
Yeah, free shipping will arrive at your doorstep. So it's pretty easy.
Yeah. There you go. Did you say the email?
I did not.
You order?
I did not.
Promo
code HAM. Promo code HAM at gmail.com. You send an email to promo code HAM at gmail.com with your address, with your Venmo, so we can send you a request for 25 hard ones, 25 bones, $25, and the color you want. Now, there's a chance, what are we basically, 50-50?
Yeah, there's a few more blacks than reds.
Yeah, we don't have an unlimited amount of inventory. We have a little over 90 hats. So if this goes well, we will maybe just get in the apparel business.
Yeah, sending an email doesn't guarantee you a hat. We will fulfill the orders as they come in. Yeah. Once we request your Venmo 25, that's how you know you're in and there's enough product for you. So, and then we'll ship them out. We'll get the shipping department, John, the guys down in the warehouse. Will process your order and get that out. We got a supply chain, workers' comp, P breaks. We got the whole thing.
American made?
Absolutely not. No, these are not.
Yeah, we don't.
These. One day we'll tell the story of these hats, but for now it's about buying. So
let's do it.
All right, man. So it's great to have the stream. Don't forget, for those of you on the stream, we get to your comments as well. Sometimes as we go, sometimes at the end, but. I think what we've got to start with here, John, is the story that has been sweeping the earth, right? Yes. Which is apparently it's already done. By the time it was the shortest fad in sports in a long time. You and I don't quite get locked in on soccer. A lot of people help educate us on soccer, the idea of a super league, and we're not going to talk about it from a soccer standpoint. We're going to talk about it from an NFL standpoint, because we view the NFL as it is, as a super league, right? There is no other level to the super league. The NFL is a super league.
Well, to me, it's the only sport right now in America, team sport, where you could throw any matchup on Thursday night, let alone Sunday night or Monday night, and do enormous ratings. And that speaks to the power of the league. Like, there is a reason for the last couple decades, the majority of Sunday night baseball games involve the Yankee or the Red Sox, because they move the needle nationally, unlike other teams. Like the San Francisco Giants don't move the needle nationally once Barry Bonds left. Even the Dodgers. I mean, you could talk. They would maybe be in a little different category, but the Cardinals. I mean, these are massive brands. I mean, the Cardinals. Who would they be the equivalent of in football? Like the Packers.
Yeah.
You can just ride the Green Bay. If Sunday night, if I told the NBC executives, 17 weeks. You're going to have to show every Packer game. Like, they'd think about it and be like, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, under no circumstances, if I just said, hey, you're going to show every Sunday night baseball game is just going to be who the Cardinals play that night. That would not be cool. That would not be okay. Now, the difference is soccer is a little like baseball in the sense of there's no cap. So Manchester United, I don't know that much about this. I think they led the charge on this, and I just saw their guys already out. They fired the guy. Or he resigned, who led the charge on the Super League. I don't think
this is like an episode of Succession, basically.
But I don't think the Super League, he might just be a little ahead of his time. Like, ultimately, this is where things are going. I believe in the NBA and baseball, which they already kind of are. And the NBA's made a killing off, historically, they're struggling now, of just riding the Lakers, the big brands with the star players, right? LeBron, the Warriors the last 5 or 6 years. That's what they do anyway. Now, they basically subsidize the league, right?
Yes, I do. Baseball, they're all a little unique, right? Baseball, from a local standpoint, is such a strong sport. There's just not a lot of things you throw on in a market locally that gets that many people to watch consistently every night, right?
True.
It's just it's just baseball's really unique in that way. And so it makes it a little more valuable, although if you don't rate in your local market, then it makes you less valuable. But look, there is kind of a salary cap, but whatever. To me, football is the great example of if you're good enough in football, if the Browns are good, if the Texans are good, if the Arizona Cardinals are good, if the Giants are good or the Cowboys are good, you're never going to be the Cowboys or the Giants. But nationally, you can be a very strong, powerful brand. I do think what's the perfect number of teams? 28? I think college football is a great conversation point here, right? College football has, in a given year, I think last year was 127 teams. That's low. Usually it's more. That would be the league you could go Super League in, right? Fox would tell us, yeah, give us Ohio State, give us Michigan. CBS would be like, give us Alabama, or ESPN now, I guess. Give us the SEC. Give us Oklahoma. Give us USC, right? I mean,
Oregon.
you could put together college football Super League
Easily.
like that.
Yeah.
We talk about it. You have the Power Five, and even that could get pared down.
Where I think football is really unique is I saw Schefter a couple weeks ago tweeted or Instagrammed that the schedule release will be after the draft. And the schedule release now with the flexible schedules, even if you get 4 or 5 primetime games, we know that is, subject to change, right? This year, for the first time, I think Monday Night Football is going to be flexible late in the season. Obviously, Sunday night has been for a long period of time. But it does give you a pretty good glimpse going into the season what the league views as the best teams.
Right.
The Browns are a great example. For the last couple decades, they have been a joke. They did not move. They were awful franchise. One season, they go to the playoffs, they win a game. If you had to guess of the 17 games, 3, 4 primetime games, just when the schedule release comes out, a Monday night, maybe a couple Sunday nights.
I think you and I talked about this the other day. Didn't we look at their schedule and say they've got, I think the number we determined was 3 or 4 games you would not want on TV. The rest of them you'd want on TV.
You're saying for the Browns.
For the Browns, based on their opponents, there's 4 games they don't want. The rest of them you'd want. If I were you can't put them all on, but.
But think how fast that changes. Like in basketball, the Suns are great. The Suns have been irrelevant for the last decade, right? They maybe they're rating this year locally, but if you put them on nationally, people aren't going to watch. And that's the thing. Immediately, the Browns, I don't care about the Browns at all. Besides, I'm a football guy. I like keeping up with the league. I will watch if they're good. I'm watching.
Yeah.
And if you give me a Sunday night, if you told me opening Sunday Night Football, Browns Ravens, I'd be like, yeah, that's a big game, right? I mean, they could easily do that, right? At Cleveland, Sunday Night Football, Browns Ravens. I'd be like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Would it shock you if that's just opening weekend, Browns Ravens, Sunday Night Football?
It would work.
100%.
It would shock me a little bit. It would shock me a little bit.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but I do think if you put it in Cleveland, the buzz with Lamar Jackson, it's an easy sell, right? Baker versus Lamar.
Yeah, you wouldn't get the ratings from that game and go, should have gone with somebody else. That's not what would happen. You'd go.
Where I do think soccer parallels probably the NFL a little bit is they're premium brands. Manchester United. I mean, I'm not a soccer aficionado. Yeah, Chelsea.
Leeds.
I think they've jumped back into it. The way it was described to me by someone with the 49ers, he's like, think about the Raiders, how they've been a sleeping giant forever. And if they're good, they can move the needle. That's what we thought Leeds were. That's why we got in the business. And what Leeds has been good, and they they made it to the Premier League.
People keep sending us messages about Leeds.
So I do think that the NFL, the Cowboys are probably the best example because they've been consistently average to below and they move the needle. But I think you could put the Packers can have a down year and they'll move the needle. The Steelers, there are 3 or 4 just brands that the Packers and the Steelers are good examples. They are not in top 10 markets. Obviously the Packers definitely are not, but Pittsburgh relative to some of the major markets in America. I have seen the power of both those 2 brands at the Niners and the Raiders. And when I worked in the NFL, just away games, their fan bases are massive. And then you just go, well, they've been good. The Steelers have been good for 50 years. The Packers have been good now for 30. When you're good for a long period of time, you accumulate more fans. We always say it's a pretty easy formula. And soccer's the same way. You can be shitty, and then you get good like Leeds, or then you get good like Man City a couple years ago when they hired Pep, and all of a sudden you just gain way more fans. The Warriors are the best example. I've lived in Northern California beside going to college or moving to Philly a little time, but the majority of my life, the Warriors during that time were really, they get this, we had a passionate, yeah, you guys were pretty niche-y. Like you guys had this the group was small.
Yeah, the signature team was fun, but not good, right?
And not that nationally relevant. I remember Shaq went on TV and was like, thought they played in San Francisco. He had no fucking clue. And they were so irrelevant that you wouldn't have that much of a clue, especially if you weren't a California or Northern California guy. You always stayed in the city. You came over on the bus. You're not even paying attention. But he realized once he started going to finals game, and once it became so big, but they won for 5 years and they became a big deal. Winning, and I think the pushback on the Super League probably in soccer is like, you don't necessarily need it.
Here's the other thing, though. I do wonder, their money, their money's humongous, right? The soccer money is
But isn't football money
massive.
enormous now?
Football money's enormous, too. But I do wonder if you got to a point, I mean, we are at that point, but if you had 10 Jerry Joneses, right, if there would be just some unrest, like, I do so much, we do so much, I do so much, why am I sharing this? Now, the counter is like, well, you're sharing it because you don't have to play on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, and because we've built this league up so much, Browns and Texans can play, and you're still going to make money off that game.
But isn't that potentially inevitable in football? I think there's a generational gap where there's a respect level that if you're the Rooneys, if you're the Maras, even if you go, when we're good, we really carry the league for a couple years and get the rating so high that like the Bengals, some of the Jags, they have nothing in common. The Arizona Cardinals have nothing in common with our ability to carry the league ratings wise when we're good. But for the health of the league, this is a partnership. We're all in this together. We get somewhat carried. If we have a down year, we get it. That's how the older generation thinks. Our generation, and AKA their kids, who are older than us, a lot of people in the NFL, a little less loyal, a little more like Jerry is somewhat of an outlier for his generation, the way he thinks. Do you know that he negotiated a special jersey deal? Like they split the jersey sales. Someone forwarded me this a long time ago. Like every team gets a piece, 132nd. He gets his own. Or maybe it's 131st because Jerry gets 100% of the profits
of Cowboy sales.
Yeah. Because he goes, well, I'm selling exponentially more than like 7 teams combined, yet I'm splitting it. And
I do think it'll
that a long time ago.
I do think it'll change as the owners change over, and it takes such extreme wealth to buy into the league that the people who buy in are not going to be there to buy in and then take a back seat and watch their team go away. Like, it will be fun money. It is not going to be necessary. I mean, you're going to be making money because you're in the NFL, but you're buying it because this is the fun that you want to have, right? Like Steve Ballmer.
Well, isn't Tepper a good example?
Tepper's a great example.
$2.4 billion. Like, he doesn't want to be like, David, you're new here. Yeah, I paid way more than all of you guys, and I viewed this as someone that buys at a condo and you're in a complex with people that rent. You can feel, again, way lower, but it's just, you just go, well, I spent the most in a complex. If you buy a house in a neighborhood, like, I don't view ourselves as equal. Like, you bought this house 10 years ago for $100,000. I buy this house 10 years later for $1 million, yet we all hand in hand in the community. Like, I feel I'm more involved in this than you. It's human nature when you spend so much money and you go, this guy's profiting, but his entry point was nowhere near mine.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is it's really the argument as the world changes.
That's why they don't sell to randoms, though, right? They don't.
Yes, because they get to approve who comes into the club. Absolutely. This is part of the argument why you don't expand either, because your home market ticket sales, while significant, are dwarfed by your television revenues, and you don't need 40 teams to get on TV to play all day Sunday, right? They got enough teams to play all day Sunday, right? Now, would you want to go 60 teams so you could play every day of the week and teams alternate bye weeks and you could just, double your inventory? Yeah, okay.
Possible to dilute your product, though.
Absolutely, right? It is. Like it's always.
I noticed that with soccer sometimes. Like on a Saturday morning, I get up, and if you get up, it's crazy. The older you get, you can't sleep in. I used to be a diehard sleep in guy. If you just get up at like 7 a.m. on Saturday and there are no sports on really, right? No American sports at that time. There's like the European tour. But if you go to NBC Sports Network or whatever, they play a lot of EPL. And you notice like there'll be Manchester United playing a team a non-soccer guy. I don't know who they're playing. And I wonder, because there's so many teams over there where if you know it, you're like, oh, we're going to kick their asses. Nobody. The NFL doesn't really. You're going to have bad teams, but at any moment, the Bengals in a year could be really good, right? And be a playoff team.
But you're looking at it from across the right. If you're living on the other side of the world, you might turn on and not know a lot about whoever, an American football team, right? Like
my point is, there are way more teams over there than there are. Like the football team is a pretty finite set number, hasn't really changed in a long time.
I would not change that number if I were the NFL.
Yeah, because you could justify
short-term game.
Why don't we add 10 more teams and just kind of expand the league, right? But I do think you would have a law of diminishing returns.
I think so.
Quarterback play shitty.
There's only 15 of them as it is, 12 of them as it is.
Because wouldn't you say that basketball is a good example of that? Like, let's keep expanding. It's like I watch. You can tell me there's never been more talent. I think these games are pretty bad right now.
I would not do that either. I'm with you. Even though Seattle does deserve a team, but
we'll just move one of the teams that are in the league.
One thing I've thought about from a college football standpoint is like, how many teams would that league be? Because to me, you could include like every part of the country. Like you want some West Coast teams, you want some Central Time Zone, you want some Northeast, you want some South. But I think you could basically make it, I made a list of all the stadium sizes. And in the West, our stadium sizes average 57,000, like Pac-12. In the SEC, their stadium sizes average 81,000. In the Big Ten, it's 74,000. In the ACC, it's 56,000. I think the interesting thing is the median, if we just rank them from top to bottom in each league and then just take the middle number, like the middle number in the Pac-12 is 53,000. Like that's middle. That's right in the middle. In the SEC, it's 81,000 people in a stadium. Is their middle. That's like your average.
And aren't we a little skewed because the Rose Bowl is so big? Most of them are probably in the 40s.
If you take the Rose Bowl out, it's 54,000 is the average. So, yeah, the Rose Bowl is big at 91. Oregon's 54,000 seats.
Oh, so they've added seats, huh?
But I think you could basically, I don't know what you would do, but let's just ballpark it. You'd go Oregon, Washington. You'd want both LAs. Even you'd have to get UCLA going, right? USC. But you'd want that market, right? If you were doing like a super league.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You'd go A&M, LSU, Alabama. It's hard to leave somebody out. Florida. Georgia.
Yes.
Auburn. The better way to talk about it is who do you leave out of the SEC? Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Nebraska have to be in.
Wisconsin. Notre Dame,
yep. ACC, Clemson, Florida State, Miami.
You could just say pick one between Florida State and Miami if you're taking Florida, right?
Big 12, Texas, Oklahoma. Good league. There you go. We made our super league. All right. Okay, so yesterday, Monday, for those of you listening on Tuesday, but Monday, John, was the big Trey Lance Pro Day, and we broke down every throw that we had access to via the videographer of North Dakota State, thanks to that person. The question now is, the Pro Days are done. The draft is a week from Thursday. The travel is over. Time to head back to the office. Do the 49ers know who they're drafting?
What's funny is I'm laying in bed last night. I got in bed pretty early, like Tom Brady style, like 8:45. And I look at my phone. It's like, did you hear anything from North Dakota today? And it's Greg Papa. He said, no. Did you hear anything? Like, Kyle ain't texting me. What? No. I mean, did you watch the clips that I watched? I mean, I don't know. So I think it's fair to say is everyone's out of the loop on this. And two, like that was a big day. I think these pro days, I'd even argue back to Mac when they went, Justin Fields, and clearly on Monday were big moments in this search. Like I don't think, on a typical year when guys go to pro days, I don't know how much truly is there because you get this thing called a top 30 visit, meaning you can bring 30 players to you. And if the Niners had a top 30 visit, I think it's fair to say that Mac, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields would have guaranteed, once they made the trade, they would have been brought out. All three would have got private workouts with probably Kyle, McDaniels, and Scangarello. And probably John Lynch there too, right? And
Jordan Matthews.
those aren't possible. Like that, they don't exist. So I think the Niners, and we talked about this on Sunday, like I think they created this. And it's more and more national people are saying, yeah, the Niners kind of ran this, specifically the Trey Lance one. Like they ran the workout. We had talked about the Justin Fields because that just felt like the momentum was there. It was so sweet. But then you really kind of take a step back. You start putting the pieces of the puzzle. You're like, well, they told him to get with John Beck the moment they made the trade. That's nothing. That's not nothing. Jordan Matthews was his wide receiver there. They ran the workout, basically. It's like, has Trey Lance been their guy the whole time? The thing I'll be fascinated, if Trey Lance is the pick, they made that pick knowing his talent, the more and more he did a pro day and got in front of other coaches and GMs, he would never be there at 12. And they didn't want to risk, who knows if they get to 6. Maybe they get into a bidding process on draft night. Because as I text with Greg, he's like, we're talking about Mac Jones. And like, I get it. He processes well and he's got little good feet in the pocket. You can't convince me that they couldn't have got Mac Jones at 6. Like, why wouldn't they have just done one first rounder on draft night?
I think if it turns out I like where you're going with this, because if they do draft Trey Lance, what you just said is part of what they were talking about when they talked about paying a premium, right? They weren't just talking about trading up to number 3 on Thursday night while the Jags are on the clock and then the Jets draft and then we have a trade. They weren't just talking about that. They were also talking about today. They were talking about what happens after everyone gets more time to dive into Trey Lance, after everybody gets to watch Trey Lance. What happens then? Right? This is, to your point, like John Lynch is kind of not, he's not just saying we think the price would have gone up on draft day. We think the price might have gone up a week before. And right now, today, after Trey Lance's pro day, it'd be a lot harder to get to 3 than it was then. Or maybe it even costs, maybe there's just more competition for that pick.
Because you know why it is? Because coaches and most GMs on a normal year don't get to see the guy in person. That usually happens at the combine. And that's why trades sometimes happen after the combine, because Trey Lance walks into your the way they do it at the combine, it's like this, it's like a hotel, but it's built through a railroad, like railroad cars, like train cars, but like individual rooms. It's kind of weird.
It's like a novelty thing.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's kind of stupid at the same time. And you have these little rooms. Remember the visual a couple years ago when Pete Carroll rips off a shirt with DK? The rooms are relatively small. Like they're tiny. They're not conference rooms. I'd call them like a small little motel room.
Little suites almost.
Yeah,
kinda.
But they yank everything out and they basically just put some chairs in there for everyone to sit around. Well, what happens the moment at one of those things, typically when a guy, like the moment Cam Newton started walking into rooms when he was, in 2011, you and I stood by him and you marvel at his size. Can you imagine the first time Ron Rivera shook Cam Newton's hand? Just had to think to himself, even if he's like, he's a little inaccurate, like, holy shit, right? You can't meet Cam Newton and not say anything else in the back of your mind, like, holy shit, that's an enormous human being.
Yeah.
Trey Lance you kind of notice that in the pro day, right? Doesn't have the pads on. He's kind of there by himself. Like, God, he looks pretty big.
Thick legs.
Right? Yeah. Can you imagine once he starts meeting, like, hey, I'm Arthur Smith. Hey, I'm Bill Belichick. And they just start meeting him. That, to me, is a game changer. Same with Justin Fields. He's a thicker guy. And that's the thing with Mac. He's 6'2.5", right? He's not blowing you away. Now, his tape's good, but then you meet him and you go, God, looks like Jimmy Garoppolo or something, right? Where Trey Lance walks in, you're like, this is a big fucking dude.
Yeah.
And that to me is where I think guys get nervous, is once we start introducing ourselves to people, shaking their hands, seeing their body size, because then they can go, God, if I've coached in the league for 20 years, what good and bad players, you got to feel for just body types. That moves the needle, right or wrong, because you can say the tape. Well, that's true. But then once I meet you, like if Zach Wilson walks in a room, they're like, God, he's a lot bigger than I thought. That's a good thing for him because tape was already good. That's why once he measured in, they're like, God, our concerns were like, we loved him when we thought he might be 6'1.5". Now he's 6'2". We're like, okay,
Did you ever
good.
feel like when you would scout a guy that you'd seen on tape that his arm could look better or worse in person than it did on tape?
Yeah, I think if you have a strong arm, it mostly looks pretty good in person. If you have an average arm, it looks. I think it rings pretty true.
You don't think the tape lies on arm strength? Because I feel like you can tell
I
pretty
remember
quickly.
going to a Raider Chiefs game and walking out to midfield to say what's up to Nagy, who was the quarterback coach at the time. He was standing right next to Alex, and I go up and hug him, and he's like, "Hey, Alex was pretty focused, like he wasn't really bullshitting, so I wasn't even trying to talk to him, but Alex kind of gave me one of these. But then when Alex throws it, you're like, if I was playing catch for them, it's not as soft of a ball as you think, but it's no different than like if you stood next to a guy throwing 90, you wouldn't go, oh, that's a pussy fastball, right?
Right.
But if you put a guy throwing 100 right next to the 90, it would look dramatic. If I would have put Mahomes right next to Alex, it wouldn't look as great. So it's all relative. I think when you throw it hard though, and you're in person, it really stands out. So like Fields and Lance, they have a strong arm. It probably looks pretty good standing there right next to it. And Kyle got to see that. And so do the other coaches, right?
I think yes, but only one team is sitting at 3. I think that it will be interesting to see after the draft, whoever they pick, will Kyle in any way tip his hand. It would be tipping his hand for his future, however he operates in the future. Will he say, we knew when we made will he say, we knew when we made this trade, we did it for this guy? Now, you might just say it even if it's not true just because it sounds good, right?
And the difference is I do think we treat quarterbacks in the draft trading up a little different than probably any other position, right? How often does
You're saying he could be honest and it wouldn't really hurt anything?
the magnitude, if you just think about like in our adult lives, like a Julio Jones move, they're very, very rare, right? To put all your chips in the middle of the table for one individual, it's always going to be a quarterback. Unless it's a veteran trade, I think these type of moves happen for Khalil Mack or Jalen Ramsey, but those guys get shopped like they would a house, right? Guys, it's open for bidding. Come give us your fucking. We might trade Khalil Mack. Let us know your offers, right?
Yeah.
Where I think with the quarterbacks, you kind of there's just so much. You got to be so secret about everything when it comes to draft moves until post draft, and then it doesn't. No one even cares.
There was also this addition since he threw. Mel Kiper now has Justin Fields going to the 49ers in his latest mock draft. Our Mel Kiper, who's been on this podcast before. And
who are you leaning with right now?
I'm still with Lance.
I feel like it's Lance too.
I'm still with Lance, but
in a weird way, sometimes you get on these text chains with people like a Greg Papa. Now I feel like maybe Mac Jones has a better chance to come to Justin Fields. But then someone tells me that Justin Fields is the guy who's fed me information that's good. I have never felt less confident about anything on this. Well, my pick is Lance, but I don't feel like we talked about yesterday, betting on it and thinking about it. Like there is still a large part of my body, the anticipation for this pick is still really high.
I know. Same for me. And I do think if like right now you go back and watch our conversation with Klatt, if I went back and watched our conversation with Klatt right now, Guy Haberman 30 minutes from now might disagree with Guy Haberman right now and go, I don't know, the Fields thing is that's right. I don't blame Mel when his mock draft changes. I don't like all that matters is who they take, and then we can sift through the pre-draft wreckage afterwards. But in terms of an entertainment product, like I think I got a guess, but I don't feel like I absolutely know.
Totally agree.
How could you at this point?
You know the great part about Mel's job or DJ's job or Mayok's job for all those years? They can do whatever they want. There is no – and this is where I think the pushback from the NFL comes back. Like the NFL people, it's like they don't really have a skin in the game. Like some people make fun of them on Twitter. Where in the NFL, they do create public – I mean, we do too just beliefs and sentiment and stuff. And yet the team was never doing that. So for teams drafting high, like you start putting thoughts in the public's mind when you have no clue. And maybe Mel knows, maybe DJ knows, but I'm just saying a lot of times with mock drafts, most of them are always wrong, beside maybe the first pick or two, right? But it's like, I thought we were going to get this guy. And then it's like, no, we were never going to draft that guy.
Yeah.
It is a tough spot. There aren't many professions where you're going to do something and the entire media's job is just guessing, and it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong, yet they do create the narratives around players for the fan base, who then emotionally reacts positive or negatively based on what they've been reading or hearing leading up to that draft, even though the teams say nothing.
Yeah. The good part is eventually the games get played. And then the evidence becomes, for the most part, irrefutable. Right?
But there's like a mark on the player if it starts off bad in the public's eye, right? Listen, if Mac is the quarterback, he's going to be fighting an uphill battle, right?
But look, yes, absolutely. But it's been this way in the history since Sandy Koufax got $50,000 and called up to the big leagues right away, right? There used to be this phrase, bonus baby, where guys came right to the big leagues. I mean, there was pressure on them in those days. In their environment, that was pressure. This is just our version of pressure now.
There has always been, you hit it on the head. If you perform and you win, whether it's Sandy Koufax, bonus baby, whether it's Cleveland Farrell a couple years ago, they took him if he had been good, no one would give a shit. Honestly, the team would get more credit, right? When you shoot a guy up, it's like, damn, are they really bringing Tim Lincecum up this fast? Cy Young, yes, they did, right? And Chris Bryant, when they held him down. Part of the reason that became such a big deal because Chris Bryant got up there and was good. If he was shitty, it would have been like, well, who even cares, right?
Yeah.
If you're good, none of the conversation before matters. Where if you're bad, though, and you could argue that's on the team, like the Tua conversation, like that's on them to get it right or wrong, right? Because they got a lot of credit. They got a lot of credit, right?
When they made the pick.
It's like he fell to 5. He was going to go number 1.
Yeah.
Turns out he wasn't even the best quarterback on the board at the time.
No, but that's not over either. That to your point.
No, it's not over. He could pass. Yeah, we've seen it before.
They got time. Okay, John, before you go any further, let's tell the people about wineaccess.com/ham. The possibilities are endless.
Got wineaccess.com/ham. 20% off. 20% off. We've already sent gifts, and we got them flowing. I cannot recommend this enough. You just go to wineaccess.com/ham. Listen, if you're listening to this right now, our demo's men, and you have a wife, a girlfriend, and she loves wine, why not send her a present? Some of the times the best presents, they don't come on your birthday. They don't come Christmas or Hanukkah. 7 crazy nights, 8 crazy nights, 8 crazy nights.
8.
Then all of a sudden you just get, imagine how good it feels. It doesn't happen because everything that arrives at my door, I've usually bought and paid for. But if someone just sent me something, if I loved wine and all of a sudden I just had wine at my front door, I'd be like, this is awesome. Do that for your girlfriend or wife. I dare you. I double dog dare you. Go to wineaccess.com/ham. And all of a sudden you could probably split it with her when you're eating dinner.
Well, I know this.
And think how happy she'll be.
And not only that, not only do the bottles that you get come with a satisfaction guarantee. If you're, for whatever reason, not satisfied, they'll get you another bottle. But it's very unlikely because their team of sommeliers, if it's not unanimous that they approve the bottle that gets in, only one of 18 bottles get on wineaccess.com, then it doesn't make it on. Now, if you're an amateur wine drinker like your boy here, every bottle comes with some explanation about the bottle, tells you about it, tells you what it pairs well with, and it makes it very easy not just to drink, to consume if you're somebody like me. It also makes it very easy to send. We went on the website today, you and I, we like wine, but we don't know a lot about it. And it can be a little overwhelming to send a gift because you're like, there's a million things here. Well, you can easily, we were like, it's a local gift. We want it to be from Napa, filter. We want it to be a Cab or a Pinot, filter. And bing, bang, boom. And not to mention, John, the prices are great. Shipping is free over, I think, $120, which is, but you can buy a bunch of $15 bottles. Like, they're all good.
They have them all. Think your parents, your dad, your mom, aunt, uncle, cousins. Think about people you haven't thought about in a while that that like wine, and you just want to shoot them something and make them smile. And it's been a crazy year. Let's put smiles on people's faces with alcohol. Wineaccess.com/ham, 20% off.
If you know all about wine, you'll love the site. If you're inexperienced, don't be intimidated. Dive in. Wineaccess.com/ham. Get you 20% off your first order. Wineaccess.com/ham. All right. Thank you for all your support as always, everybody. Okay, so here's the other part of this. Because we've spent a lot of time, the YouTube comments will get very upset, I'm sure, when I say his name. But we've spent a lot of time talking about Mac Jones.
Say his real name.
Mike Jones.
His real name.
Oh, Mike McCorkle. Jones.
McCorkle.
So Middlecoff found out on the live stream Monday that his name is McCorkle. That was a great moment. So if Trey Lance or Justin Fields is the pick for the 49ers at 3, the question then is, what happens to Mac Jones? We've been talking about him like he might be a top 3 pick. Could he fall out of the top 10 if he's not the Niners pick?
Right before we jumped on, we had been trying to get him on the show, and he was so busy. One of his guys hit me up and said, it's craziness. If the Niners take him, 100%, we'll get him on with you guys. So it's like, I was like, because I'm not down on McCorkle. You want to bring McCorkle on the show? I'm game. But we mentioned it the other day on the podcast, or maybe it was a live stream. I've been thinking a lot about this. In texting Greg Papa, I just asked, and I am not anti-McCorkle. Like, I think he's a good player. You couldn't have watched Alabama and go, like, their quarterback's a scrub. And I think sometimes, and I've said this forever, if you go pick 36 or 38 or 42, that does not mean people didn't view you as a good player, right? Like,
well, if you've seen the I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to say Tom Brady's name with because I know that comp happens and that's a crazy comp. But have you just seen what Bill Belichick said about Brady when they drafted him? Like, it was really complimentary, right? If you watch him, he was tough. He knew how to win. Can't wait to get him in here and see. Like, he didn't view him like I just drafted a scrub. He didn't know he drafted the greatest of all time.
Well, because part of it is forever. I think we're in the quarterback inflation time, and it's really the last couple of years since I'd say the Mahomes. I text a buddy with the Chiefs. I'm like, in a weird way, I think you guys changed everything.
I agree.
Because you guys got this franchise quarterback at number 10, and all you had to give up was a first-round pick. And I think all these teams, they either passed on him or they could have traded up to get him. And Desean Watson goes 2 picks later.
Yeah,
it's just that inflated Mac Jones. Because I when I was texting with Papa, I said
it inflated Mac Jones.
Well, it just inflated quarterbacks.
Yeah,
and I think Mac Jones is benefiting, potentially from getting drafted this high because of the quarterback inflation. Now, I think a large part of that is Kyle. Because in the scouting community, there's never been a player, at least in my adult life. There have been Christian Ponders and Blaine Gabberts. Those guys didn't go 3rd overall. Some of those guys went 8 or 11 or 12. Like, that's still really high, but there's a big difference between going 12 and going 3, right? And I think part of the conversation with Mike McCorkle, Mac Jones, is that he's not just going 3. That team was not at 3, right? They had to move up and traded a freight to get him. There's never been a player with his physical attributes, which are not elite in any, his best quality is he's unreal at reading the defense. It's like, well, are you just seeing because his head's moving? Like, how do you really know? Right? It's one of those things. It's not truly quantifiable. Now, I think coaches have a better feel for that probably, especially if you can call Sark and he's like, hey, or Saban's like, here's our play sheet from those 5 games. If you really want to dive deep, I'm telling you, this guy's elite or whatever. But the average fan or even evaluator don't know. That's why quarterbacks, I'm not even talking in the NFL, have been hit or miss in the history of the league. That I just think his physical skill set is on most years, I'd say historically, C.J. Beathard. Now, Mac was a better college player than C.J. Beathard. I went back and looked. He was 58 career percentage, 58. He wasn't even that accurate. But what you just watch CJ in practice or watch him in games, not a great athlete, not a great arm, but just was probably a really good college quarterback. I mean, really was. I mean, started at Iowa, played in a Rose Bowl. The guy was a good player. Mac's better version than that. But I don't think if CJ was a mid to late 3rd rounder, to me, normal years pre-quarterback inflation, I'd say Mac's somewhere between 25 and 40. If you because we have players, you and I have been lucky enough to spend a lot of time and go to practices with the Raiders and the 49ers, and 2 guys in the same draft class who have a lot of physical characteristics that parallel Mac. Some are better, some are worse, in Derek and Jimmy. And they were pre-quarterback inflation, and they both went in the 2nd round. Then I'd say if either one of those 2 guys.
And we're smaller school relatively to Alabama guys.
But if I told you that Derek Carr coming out of Fresno State or Jimmy Garoppolo coming out of Northern or Southern or whatever Illinois school he went to, are either one of those guys going in the 2nd round of this draft? If Derek Carr, Fresno State coming out right now, How does he not go in the first round?
I don't think Derek would. Jimmy, I don't put them in the same class athletically.
That's fair.
And from an arm standpoint,
let's just use Derek.
Derek
much more
Derek
productive.
Carr would be. Derek Carr was. I don't want to say it was Zach Wilson, but it was kind of Zach Wilson.
I think he was, guy. I think he was.
It was even similar to the point that, like, there weren't a lot of big games he played in his last year, but he played, like, a big game, right? And it didn't go great. I think that was the USC game and the bowl game.
Remember the year before, too, against SMU Hawaii Bowl?
Marcus Hunt, right? That was the big guy.
Grigson picked him in the second round. Terrible.
Wasn't he like 6'8" or something? Like 6'10"?
Oh, my. He was massive.
But, yeah, I think that's the comp for Derek. Now, does that mean Derek would go 2 in this draft? No. But
is he going top 20?
Yes.
100%. Is he going top 12?
Might.
Probably.
Like, to your point with quarterbacks.
Because I think Mac 6 years ago is going in the 30s or 40s. So he's competing now to go to the Niners. But my point on this whole thing, if the Niners don't take him, are we sure that is there a chance that over half the league has him as like the 5th or 6th quarterback on their board? Because
doesn't like
he has
him.
Nothing in common with the other guys.
Right. And also, do you like him more than Sam? Let's go through it here. Atlanta at 4, nope. Cincinnati at 5, nope. Now, you could have trades. Miami at 6, nope.
No.
Right, especially if like a quarterback goes 4. If the quarterback's the top 4 picks, now you've got Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, 2 tackles.
But even let's even say that Pitts goes at 4. So you're okay. Then the Bengals are taking a player. Miami's taking a player. The Lions aren't doing it. Nope.
Carolina doesn't make sense.
Schefter just tweeted they're actively looking to trade back.
Denver?
That would be a curveball. But if you were them, would you take Mac Jones over Justin Fields? Because in this scenario, Justin Fields hadn't been picked either.
Well, I thought you said. Oh, did you say Kyle Pitts went 4?
I just said a player goes 4, non-quarterback.
Well, I would. No, I think you take.
Obviously, in this scenario, you're right. A trade up probably
4
happens,
like those 4 guys. I would expect go ahead of Mac Jones.
In the history of the sport, if we just take out, let's just assume Trey Lance goes 3, and there's Justin Fields and Mac Jones on the board. Mac Jones does not hold a candle to the physical attributes of Justin Fields. Now, playing quarterback is more. I mean, Alex Smith just retired. It's more than just physical attributes. But part of taking quarterbacks really high, if you're going to take a swing with a physical attribute guy. We've seen the Christian Ponders, the Blaine Gabberts. We've seen the average be failed too. And that's what you give Scout Haberman some credit. Like to assume that Mac Jones has a high floor would be pretty ignorant to the way the draft works.
Because people
there are no such thing.
Yeah, there's like this idea that we got. Wait a second. The Bengals, let's say quarterbacks go in the top 4. The Bengals are going to be drafting either Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, Kyle Pitts, or Jamar Chase. There's just 4 lock Pro Bowlers. They're all pros. It's probably not going to work out that way. Maybe it does. Maybe it's an all-time draft. If like all those guys are lock superstars and 3 of these quarterbacks hits, then it's an all-time draft. That's what it is, right?
I mean, we're talking like the
but those aren't
2011 J.J. Watt, Aldon Smith. I mean, that Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Von Miller, Cam Newton. It's that draft a decade later is still viewed. Oh, the 11 draft, man. That's one of the great drafts of all time. Partly because it was like a 60% hit rate. There was still a Blaine Gabbert in there. There were still shitty players. Just listing the players you listed, if I wanted to throw on, okay, let's throw Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle. Of like those 7-8 players, if 4 of them are good, if 4 of them are really good and the other 4 are just like regular kind of average draft picks, that's an incredible draft.
Yeah.
Because probably 2 of the quarterbacks will be good.
Because now one of those guys is going like 11. See, I think you start talking about teams, it's like, will Detroit take him? Would Denver take him? Would Dallas take him? Would the Giants take him? Philly can't mess around with that this year. The Chargers, no. Minnesota, would Minnesota do it? Like, is there? Even
so
if
they just get 2 Kirk Cousins on their rosters?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, would Pittsburgh, like if he's there at 24, would Pittsburgh? I'm just trying to find somebody who would go, you know what, this is value. We could use him, maybe not right now, but soon. How does he end up as a first-round pick? Does Bill at 15 see him at 12 and go, you know what, I want to go to 12 and get him? Belichick, okay? But we talk about this. I've said this a lot. There are not most teams are usually in a weird spot. The majority of the league's usually in a weird spot of not sure yet if their quarterback's good enough, not ready to take a first-round quarterback, but also pretty sure their guy's not a franchise quarterback. Most guys are not franchise quarterbacks, and most guys are not about to get cut. And so you're always in this little realm where you're like, okay, we're Chicago. Are we taking a quarterback in the first round this year?
Well, Mac Jones might be better than Andy Dalton right now.
So if Mac Jones is there at 20, does Chicago take him?
I mean, it's a tough spot. I don't know what you do.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just like there's a good case to make to take him. There's also a good case to make you go, we got to get an impact player at another position right now because we just got to make the playoffs this year, right? But you could exactly, John, if you're in the meeting room, you'd go, well, Mac Jones is going to be better than Andy Dalton this year. And we got other good players on this team.
Because I would rather have this year, I'd rather have the unknown of McCorkle than Andy Dalton. But if I was the owner, it's like, hey, do you guys believe this guy's a franchise quarterback, or are you just doing it to try to save your jobs? That's where I might get involved. If I was a McCaskey.
Right.
One of the 3 90-year-old McCaskies that are just roaming around.
Would New Orleans take him at 28?
Yes, see, to me, there is value then. This is where I say, this is normally Mac Jones. This is who he is, a late 20s, early 30s guy.
And those quarterbacks can be good.
Now, some inflation, if Kyle Shanahan is the perfect coach for him, if he has so much money, it doesn't matter. Like, that would be the analogy, right? Like, inflation to Kyle is irrelevant. But I would say that, like, thinking he's quarterback proof has been proven with Mullins and CJ and just over the years, it's not necessarily true, right? He's not quarterback recession proof. We've seen him with average guys lose games.
For sure.
This year was a great example.
But I do think we're talking, these are not guys that ever sniffed. These are not guys.
Nick Mullins and CJ never had the accomplishments of this guy. But my point is,
there's more clay there with Mac Jones.
But physically, they do have some similarities. He's closer to them than he is like some Cam Newton or Kyler Murray or some just freak top 5 pick typically, right? Carson Wentz. Think of where the guys that have missed, where you feel like Carson Wentz missed. This year was just bad, but it's like his physical talent is elite. Everyone acknowledges that. I think like as we watch more and more with Mariota, we're like, I don't think physically he's that special. Jared Goff, you're like, I just don't see the physical attributes, right? Jameis was like, I think most people acknowledge, like, Jameis has the skills. It's like his decision-making is terrible. I do think if you're going to go down, and that's what Trubisky, it's like, God, I just don't see it with Trubisky. When you have an elite prospect, elite talent, I think people understand better if it doesn't work out. It's hard when you just you take the guy with the lack of physical attributes.
But to the point we made earlier, if they draft Mac Jones, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Mac Jones end up as a better quarterback than any of the guys drafted after him. Like, I think that's a real if the 49ers have Mac Jones, he might end up as a better quarterback than the other two. That's a real possibility.
Well, I think Kyle would tell you they believe he would, right? That's why they make.
That's why you do it. Yeah, I'm just saying I don't think that's a crazy thought. Back to my original point, which you referenced, there is no sure thing, and that includes Justin Fields with Kyle Shanahan. That's not a sure thing either.
One thing I do wonder is, like, the crazy part about quarterback is how much the intangible stuff matters, like how much guys like you. Remember Mariota? Remember when Mariota got into that game against the Chargers last year? And I remember looking at Twitter, all the Tennessee Titans players were like, fuck yeah, Marcus, go kill it. It's like I think people loved him. People in Tennessee really liked the guy.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't fail because he's too quiet. No, like, the leadership, the guys gravitated toward him. So it's like, just because you have elite intangibles, it doesn't even – I think it's why it's so impossible to draft this position and why we have so many hits and misses. You can be a great guy, good leader, and still fail.
You got to value it the right amount, right? You and I have both been at Oregon's campus. Marcus Mariota is like the centerpiece of Oregon football if you go to their campus.
Yeah.
Like the centerpiece. Like, it's – you walk into the main room and boom, there's his Heisman. And like
he's a bigger deal than Justin Fields, or Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And Marcus Mariota. I mean, it's hard. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but more than likely Justin Herbert is going to be infinitely and just the gap as NFL pros will be wide.
I think you would say pretty quickly that the skill sets are very different. So, we'll see. We'll see. All right, what else?
We had touched on this a little bit yesterday, but I think it is kind of sad. And I've just ended up watching some highlights of those Harbaugh years, and it was just, you forget, like, Kyle is, and I texted you this last night, like, I think Kyle is the better long-term, like, if you were just going to bet on a guy for a decade to be your coach, I think Kyle's more stable than Harbaugh. The Harbaugh run, though, was really unlike anything that you'll see ever.
Like just a rock and roll band that just flamed out after 4 years. You know, it was just.
But those 3 years will like live on. The people that experienced it, like that was fucking badass. I mean, they had guys chasing people with brass knuckles, winning, divisions, breaking skulls, and guys getting arrested. Aldon Smith, I would say, is a defining character of that time period because they draft him. It was like, who the hell they draft? And then he was so great. He was so dominant. He missed almost 5 years, guy.
Here, have a drink.
And he got signed last year by the Cowboys. Remember, he had like 2 sacks or 3 sacks the opening game 1, and then his season was kind of average. Seattle just signed him. Within 2 days after getting signed, he has an arrest warrant. He is so talented, so big, and I bet in John Schneider and Pete Carroll's mind, they have envisioned those couple years when they saw him. How could they not? Right? They saw him multiple times. They released a statement like you would for your first-round pick, like, we're gathering all the facts. Aldon just missed 5 years for like 10 arrests, and they didn't cut him immediately. Like this, I think he's just one of the most unique players in NFL history. He hasn't even done anything lately, but they didn't immediately cut him. They gave a guy that just missed 5 years and got in so much trouble over the years that probably any other, just normal player in his status would immediately be cut, and Seattle's like, yeah, we're just going to gather some facts. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah. I do wonder if the situation that we just had happen with Aaron Donald contributed to this at all. Like if it just makes it for everyone to just practice a little patience, because for 2 days we thought Aaron Donald beat some guy's ass. Then it turned out not only did he not beat the guy's ass, he tried to help him. Right?
The difference, though, I'd say is, to my knowledge, Aaron Donald is a high character, never had an issue in his life. Aldon's track record, like I'd say his track record, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. / he just missed it. Like it's most players, Guy Haberman, John Middlecoff, random guard, random DB, immediately gets cut. I think it shows the power of, I bet when they signed him, especially if they flew him out, there's like, God, this guy's still big, right? We don't have anyone that looks like this.
Do you think, because this would be the responsible thing to do you think they had a conversation about what happens if he gets in trouble again? Or did that not, like, before this season?
I think you always have that conversation when you sign a guy like that.
You would think. Yeah, I would hope.
But again, you
can't predict the situation.
And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what's going on? Because sometimes a situation.
Aldon Smith claims he didn't even touch this guy that's saying he beat him up. Who's like, I think it's his pregnant sister's husband. There was an altercation. Aldon goes to break it up, or who knows what. I don't know.
But see, like if I was consulting, I'd say, well, hey guys, whether he's innocent or guilty, part of the deal with Aldon is this shit follows him. Like to me, my issue with Desean Watson, no one beside Desean and the girls know exactly what happened. But the thing I'd say to Desean is, if you are innocent and you just paid these chicks to hook up with them and you had a thing for massage therapists and it was all consensual, you are still a walking, talking red flag now, because in the history of quarterbacks, like there's only the guys that have had issues with women we consider scumbags and losers, right? Like Roethlisberger never shook that. Now, and Roethlisberger had won a Super Bowl by the time he had gotten in trouble. But when you're known as this high character guy, Aldon's known as kind of a train wreck. But like the moment you get a red flag that follows you, like I don't think Desean Watson will ever be viewed the same. They've already admitted he's been hooking up with all these chicks. He's now trying to get a jury trial. Like it's like you've become a disaster, even if you're innocent. Like this situation is a dumpster fire, Desean, and you caused this. Like even if you're just having sex, like you got to use your brain. This is why when I pay $35 million, I expect to get a guy I don't ever have to worry about. And ideally, like Alden was on pace to be one of the Macs, the Aaron Donalds, the Von Millers, and you just never want to worry about your $20 million. Ideally, right? Your highest paid players, they're your best players, and in a perfect world, you worry about the least.
Right. Right.
Right.
And it's not
Julio
just,
Jones.
and
or
you don't
whoever.
just not worry about you not going to jail or having a legal issue. It's just, I don't even worry about embarrassing things that are not even legal.
I think ideally you take pride in them actually doing all the good things, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And being the staple of your franchise.
Face of your franchise that you don't worry is going to make your franchise look bad off the field.
I don't know if maybe a 30 for 30 on Alden actually might be kind of sad. I mean, it wouldn't be like an uplifting and easy watch.
Depends when you air it, right? Depends when you do it. You never know.
Yeah, but
But
he is. Wouldn't you say he's one of the great what could have been? Because there is no disputing. Like if he just been a high character, smart, stayed out of trouble, no issues, he would have been a 15 sack guy at least for like 7-8 year span and just dominated. He was unstoppable.
What do you have? 19?
Yeah, second year. But to me, it was like when you actually stood next to him and you've been around NFL players, he didn't look like other NFL players. You remember that? Just how long he was? You're like, how did this guy last till, when Balky drafted him, people thought he was an awful pick, remember?
Yep.
I remember thinking, I was in the league, I was like, who? What's this guy's name? What's this guy's deal? Got to give Balky credit.
I thought the same thing. Who is this guy?
But then do you give him credit because it was kind of turned out to be a disaster? It was, both ends of the
Yeah,
spectrum.
I do tend to think like you get yourself into the Super Bowl, you gave yourself a shot.
If you were going to give hits and misses on Balky's career?
Yes, I would give that a hit. That's crazy.
Hit with just like a little red line next to it.
I'm just saying if we just made a chart and it was like good picks and bad picks from Trent Baalke, I would have to call that a good pick.
Yeah.
You almost want you were in position to win a Super Bowl in part because of that guy, right?
Yeah.
You could argue you were a Super Bowl contender for 3 years in part because of that guy.
Agreed.
Or 2 years, maybe we'd say. Mike Tomlin's going to coach the Steelers for the rest of our lives. That update. John, he's been the coach since 2007. 2007.
He's 49 years old.
Which is young for NFL coaches.
He kind of got the job basically at 35.
He's finished first in his division 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. He has never, how many teams in the division? 4 last I checked. Never finished in last place.
He's never finished, you say under 500?
He's never finished under 500.
No.
He's been 500 3 times.
Well, like, when the dust settles, him and Harbaugh are going to have a combined a lot of years at their jobs, right?
Harbaugh,
Whenever they both get fired. Yeah, John, not Jim. Even though Jim's, you're going to look up, he's going to have like a decade-long Michigan career, finishing 3rd or 4th in division every year. John Harbaugh's had some pretty low moments. Now, he won a Super Bowl more recently than Tomlin. Obviously, that year against the Niners, Tomlin's last Super Bowl was 9. But I think when you just look at Mike Tomlin, he's just been better than Harbaugh. Because just consistently, Harbaugh had a rough 2 or 3 year stretch there now part of it, you'd say, both those two guys work for their GMs, right? Harbaugh did for Ozzie. And Tomlin, it's the Rooney / the Colberts. It's not like Tomlin is in charge of personnel. But I do think the Steelers, beside the Patriots, who were just a higher level of them, but I would say, were probably the number 2 team over that 2007 till this year of just every year you knew what you were getting. Like even the Packers had a couple, they had an under 500 year where Mike McCarthy got shit canned, right?
Yeah,
Seattle, but Pete didn't show up there till 10.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because the consistency is just impossible to replicate. It's so out of the realm. But does he need, sometimes I wonder, like, he got the 1 Super Bowl year 2. And I do wonder if he'll ever, is he going to get the full credit for being this good for this long? Like, let's say he's another 3 years, gets another extension without another Super Bowl. Like, if that Super Bowl had been in the middle of the tenure, I feel like it would feel a little different. It got him so much cachet. I mean, he's 145 and 78. 65. He wins 65% of his games. And maybe it's not even Super Bowl, John. Maybe it's just a couple of AFC championship games. The test is coming because they're going to have to change quarterbacks at some point here. And to me, that will be.
Is that kind of what this extension is? Like, we're going to give you another quarterback almost?
Yeah, maybe. And to me, if they continue this, even if he doesn't win another Super Bowl, again, what he's done already, we're not debating. It's incredibly impressive. He is an outlier, extreme outlier when it comes to NFL head coaches. But if somehow he can work, like you said, he's 49. So if they can hit on a quarterback here, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the next guy, but within the next 3-4 years, if they can hit on another quarterback, now we might be, then maybe Mike Tomlin does win another Super Bowl and he's got 15 years between championships and he goes down as an all-time great coach.
Well, I'm going to give you a number just because I did the math last night. I do think when a guy leaves and you just look at the numbers, you'll go, God, I don't think that guy got enough respect. And I would say Tomlin's better at his job than Alex Smith was at his job. But when Jim Harbaugh arrived till this year, I just did the math last night. I was like, boom, boom, boom. 80, 36, and 1. That was Alex Smith's record from Jim Harbaugh's first year with the Niners. Somehow he went 5-1 this year for Washington football team. That's an underrated 4 extra wins on that win total. But 80, 36, and 1 under Harbaugh, Andy, and Jay Gruden / Ron Rivera. Like, when you just say 80, 36, and 1, I'm like, God damn, that's great. And then Dubow quotes my tweet and says, over that period of time, players with 50-plus starts, the only guys that had better winning percentages were Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. So I'm sure if Mike Tomlin, gets fired in 2025, his stats, when you just throw it up, will be like, God. It'll be like 3 coaches over the period of time. It's like Andy Reid and Belichick over his tenure had better records. You'll be like, that's it? No, that's it. And I just think it's going to age. Because this gets back to, you can have a fantastic season and not win the Super Bowl. And to me, what the Packers have done for the last decade has been a raging success. Now, would they like more Super Bowls? Of course. They've been to 5 NFC Championship games. Now, they've only been to 1 Super Bowl. It stings when you get to the NFC Championship game. But if you rack up 4, 5, 6 NFC Championship games, that's a pretty big deal. If you just make the playoffs, I think sometimes that can be a little overrated. But, are you making NFC Championship games? To me, can Tomlin make a couple more AFC Championship games? That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I would say the longevity is always – we can always argue 1 great year versus 10 great years. Which one would you rather have? But the longevity is usually, if you're doing it at an elite level, is usually more indicative of how good you are. I'm not arguing it's more impressive. I'm just arguing it's more indicative of how good you are. Having several great years versus having a couple great years, several great years, I would argue usually more indicative of how great you are, right? I'll go with a 90s, you and I both love 90s baseball, 90s baseball comparison. Who was a better home run hitter? Brady Anderson, who had one incredible year, he hit 51 one year, or Fred McGriff, who never hit more than 35, but hit almost 500 home runs over the course of his career. 50 home runs for Brady Anderson. It's not even close, right?
I'm taking the crime dog.
You're taking the crime dog. You're taking the crime dog. And I would say Tomlin's even a higher level than that.
But see, I would ask a hypothetical question, and I don't know this, and I've thought about this. Are there a lot of guys like Alex Smith that never get the position, or not the position, but the opportunity to play for a really good team and a good head coach, that if you just put them in the situation, are there more Alex Smiths than non-Alex Smiths that, and he's probably higher, and he was the number 1 overall pick, but that could have a stretch of 3 or 4 years where they go 40-20 as a starting quarterback, but we go, that guy's a bust. But if we had been with a Belichick, been with a Kyle, been with a McVay, they would have been solid.
So
I think Jared
Goff's
a good example. If you just look at Jared Goff's record, he's been on good teams. He actually wins a lot more than you think. But Jared Goff's closer to Alex Smith than you think. He'll go to Detroit. They probably won't win a lot, and he'll just be a loser. But we saw him on good teams. Jared Goff's fine. Now, he's not Brady or Rodgers or Mahomes, but you can go to the playoffs every year with Jared Goff if your team's solid, right? Is that fair? Like, are there more Jared Goffs than we realize?
So I think it's a fine line. Like, I think yes to your question about is the league filled with guys who are in the wrong situation and would have been able to be starting quarterbacks for longer in better situations? Hell yes, absolutely. I don't think the league is filled with Alex Smiths, though. Alex Smith started his career from 2005 to 2010. Remember, he missed one season. He won 19 games and lost 31. He had 7 different offensive coordinators in 7 years. I don't think it's normal to come out of that and still have left in you what he had left in him. I was talking to a buddy today who's really close with another quarterback who played with Alex. And the guy basically, the story he related, because I was just like, man, Alex, he's like, God, I've just heard he's so special. I was like, well, what have you heard? Like, give me an example. He said most quarterbacks, after a certain point, their egos are big enough. If there's not a clear hierarchy of this is definitely the starter and this is definitely the backup, and even sometimes when there is, their egos are eventually big enough that it's hard for them to coexist for a long time, for like a sustained amount of time, to really be on the same team because they're kind of working against each other in some ways. It's not normal. He's like, the story I heard was a quarterback shows up on an Alex team and was blown away at how never for a second Alex Smith was anything but like on his side too somehow. He said it's just not normal for NFL play. That's not how it usually works.
Because you're essentially in a weird way coming from my job. There's only one guy that can play.
It's like it's like I didn't really understand it till I started watching the Netflix thing, but like this idea of teammates in F1, like you're not teammates. Yeah. There's no teammate. Like you want to get so.
Well, the kicker situation, you end up cutting a guy when you go into the regular season, but like a kicker competition in the off season, you are sitting next to each other, you're eating lunch together, being friends, but really you both want that $1 million job, right? So deep down, how do you? It's a hard balance, and most people, one, they can't even begin to fake it because it's like this is serious. But I also think it speaks to you're right. There's a character to him that. He'd made a lot of money. He has unique circumstances.
Now, I guarantee if we went and found a quarterback who's in the league right now, but maybe hadn't. Yes, there are. I'm with you, John. There are absolutely. The situations matter so much, and it's just impossible to know would Aaron Rodgers have become Aaron Rodgers if the Browns had drafted him, if the Niners had drafted him. Maybe it would have. I don't know, but I do think I think it's a good thought to go. Well, maybe not. Maybe the situation. Backing up Brett Favre for 3 years and being in that versus what Alex went through, maybe maybe it would have worked out. It might have.
Yeah,
it might have. But yes, I think there are guys that the circumstances didn't allow for them to succeed. But no, I don't think the league is filled with Alex Smith.
Well, the quarterback that you're talking about that spent time around Alex, was he a legitimate NFL player or was he just kind of
legitimate NFL player?
Gotcha. Yeah. So it wasn't like, he was nice to me. I was no threat.
No, it wasn't some guy who was just his backup.
Yeah.
It was a guy who could take
Patrick Mahomes really felt that way about him.
And I was like, yeah. I was like, look, Pat. What's his brother's name? I was like Jackson with him. I'm like, Jackson, look, man, just.
Mahomes tweeted something out. Or I think he gave the Chiefs
a
quote, and the Chiefs put it out that Mahomes said, I would not be where I'm at if it wasn't for him. Guy, he spent 1 year around him. And I remember talking to Andy 2 years ago at the Combine, BSing with him, and he was just saying, like, Patrick is not just saying this stuff. Like, I know it, and I made sure that he knew it, but I didn't even have to. He just knew it, like how nice Alex was. And that situation, to me, it's easy for Aaron because you and I know Jordan Love wasn't very good this year, let alone the teammates. Right? He's skipping balls, Boyle's beating him out. It was easy. I think with Mahomes, the way it was clearly talked about, like, God, you should have seen him in practice. Like, Alex is not blind. He sees this guy like, holy shit, right? Mm-hmm. And he knows that, I got to win in the playoffs. There's a huge pressure. There's this elephant in the room of what they just traded for him. And maybe it was easier for him to do because everything he had been through. But you're right. He's a one of one as a personality. Like, listen, Aaron is the better player. But I think pretty consistently, Alex has the universal approval of every human he's ever played with, right?
Yep. And respect.
Which is very rare in the NFL for a guy that some of the teammates were around Alex when he wasn't even that good.
To your point, and then he won a bunch of games.
Won a bunch
of
games.
He's a winning quarterback, right? He was a winning quarterback.
But if you remember, the thing about Alex is he was the most polarizing player on the good teams of his era.
For sure.
It was like, is he good enough? And it's fair. Like, he was probably somewhere in the middle, right? He was better than he got credit for, but he wasn't good enough. His team acknowledged, like, they had to take a big swing to get a quarterback.
Yeah. Look, the Chiefs have been viewed as the dominant team in the last couple of years, and look what it took for them to win the Super Bowl.
Get rid of him.
It's really hard. But I just mean, look, in the Super Bowl they played, how hard it was just to win that game. And they would, like, if you had the best head coach on earth, he could pick one team to go coach, he'd go coach the Chiefs right now, right?
But if I told you that over that whole time, and a lot of these wins were the Chiefs' tenure, right? I would imagine if we added them up, of the 80, probably 40 of them were, maybe even more. If I said they got Patrick Mahomes that whole time, the last 8 years, do the Chiefs have like 3 Super Bowls?
Yeah, they might.
Now part of it is like,
but
of course, Mahomes is better.
But again,
now.
just look how hard it is to win when you are the team that everyone thinks. Just look at the last year. 3 months ago.
It's easier to win playoff games with Mahomes than Alex. It's hard to win the Super Bowl
with anybody.
It's hard to win. I think his flaw, and Peyton had this a little bit. When you have an average arm, what happens in the playoffs, especially in a place like Kansas City? It's freezing cold. You go play New England, you go play Baltimore. Like, it's harder for weak arm quarterbacks in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a tried and true formula. And this is back to McCorkle. It's like, well, you have to go play Green Bay in wild card round. Pouring
Seattle
rain.
in the rain. We do want to get into this because it did feel like it turned out like under the radar somehow. The PGA had launched a Super League without anybody knowing, John. The lucrative bonus structure, as reported by Golf Week, the PIP, the Player Impact Program. The PIP awards players money at the end of the year, a pool of $40 million distributed among 10 players. So MVP gets $8 million. You're like, oh, well, what's just FedEx points? Most points from strong performances? Nope, not exactly. Here's how they're ranked. FedEx Cup points, that's 1. 2, their popularity in Google searches.
That's pretty fucking nuts. That's kind of stupid, I think.
I couldn't believe that when I read it. 3, the Nielsen brand exposure rating, which places a value on the exposure a player delivers to sponsors through the minutes they are featured on broadcasts.
But the broadcast, see, to me, this is already kind of weird land. Like, who's controlling that?
Just if you're over there hitting your 8th shot out of the woods, Mercedes is getting credit for the logo on your sleeve, right?
Yeah.
I mean, someone could argue, wait, I'm better than this guy, and he got on TV more only because he had more bogeys this year from the water.
Yeah, the one thing with golf, unlike basketball, baseball, or football, at times it can feel arbitrary who they're showing, right? Beside, like, the leaders. They do kind of pick and choose who they show beside the leaders.
Well, yeah, I
right?
just think of if you're not a leader, you're not playing well, but you're doing crazy, awful stuff, right?
But even what if you're just like, a lot of times you just can be cruising between like 10th and 20th place and not get a lot of pub, even though you're playing well.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But we're not talking about the top 30 guys in this ranking, right? We're talking about the top 8. I would guess over time. Well, actually, I've got a good name here. But the Nielsen brand exposure rating places a value on that. The Q rating, which measures the familiarity and appeal of a player's brand based on what? Like phone calls to people doing a research?
I would not be cool if I was even like an above average player. It'd be like, I don't understand how we're quantifying this.
Well, I got another scenario for you.
Feels very radio-y. Like there's not like we're in the podcast game. Everything's quantifiable. I don't feel like most of this is quantifiable. Do you?
No. Well, I mean, they'll quantify it, but it's not necessarily a reflection of who deserves. The MVP index rating, which calibrates the value of the engagement a player drives across social and digital channels, and the meltwater mentions, or the frequency with which a player generates coverage across a range of media platforms. Okay. What happens when somebody gets arrested and so they get Google searched, their brand awareness goes through the roof, and they finish 4th in a year in which they didn't play, 8th? I don't know. Maybe 8 is a small enough number that it would never get thrown out of whack for one thing here, right? But like, would Tiger have been making the money when he wasn't even? Was he going to finish first when he wasn't playing on tour just because his name was all over every tabloid, every internet story?
Well, do you think anyone on PGA Tour has been Googled more in 2021 than Tiger Woods? Be hard pressed to say.
I mean, I would love to see what the rankings are right now. You like Ricky Fowler, right?
I
He's
bet
on
he's
a lot of
plummeted
commercials.
in recent memory, though.
Last year, Ricky was in the top 5. This year,
like I would imagine Bryson is top 3 right now.
I would think Bryson would be 1 or 2, him or Tiger right now. And I would guess when you start factoring in like TV exposure, Bryson is number 1.
But like, do I need to Instagram? Are you saying that if I'm a PGA Tour member, you want me to try to Instagram more to make money? Is that like what you're basically incentivizing people to be more active on social media to help out the brand, help out the sport, and we will compensate you.
You help make yourself a star. See, this is where I don't think it's crazy what they're trying to accomplish.
When I'm talking it out loud, it makes sense.
Make yourself interesting off the course, and that will, even if you're not winning, that's okay. You not doing well is important because now you're super famous, right? Like Ricky Fowler not participating is a story in part because Ricky's on every 3 commercials.
Yes.
Ricky missing the Masters is a story because he's famous. Well, why is Ricky famous? It's not from all his wins. I mean, he's good. That's part of it.
He was a good player, but he was marketed very hardcore. Yeah.
The way he looks, the way he acts, like it's all part of his deal.
I would say his Puma orange outfit was a big deal.
Absolutely. Right? But that's a great example.
Put him on the map.
So great. You can walk out there in the Payne Stewart. Now you're on screen more.
What if you wore like, I guess you can't wear, I was going to say super short shorts. You can't wear shorts. You'd have to do something outrageous, right? It would make more sense to try to like dive in a lake to fish out a ball or something. Do something
every
crazy.
week. Be hitting it in the water on purpose once you've made the cut, but you're not going to win just so you can roll your shoes up and like swing and fall in. And it's like, is he trying to hit a ball or is he just making a TikTok video during this round?
Do you think there's a chance that any guy have done some things extreme for this? You think he did that for that?
I do now. Now there's something to it to me.
What about Horschel losing his shit all the time? He might just be like
just his deal. But the little, what is it called? The stanky pinky?
Yeah, the stinky pinky.
The stinky pinky.
Pank. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And is that bad? I don't know.
I think it's. I would doubt that it happens that often if a guy's in contention because you're so locked in. I could see it's like shit. I'm gonna finish between 15th and 20th. Let's do some funny shit here.
Yeah, but I would also say, is that enough? Like, there's enough here. Again, last year, Golf Week said last year it was Tiger, Rory, Koepka, Mickelson, Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, Justin Rose, and Adam Scott in the top 10. Okay, the Stinky Panky might, if they paid out for the top 60, maybe helped you out. When they're paying out the top 8, I don't think it helped you out.
An $8 million bonus is not nothing. Now, I think the average guy on tour would say, well, look at the guys it's going to. They make so much money. It is nothing to them. And it's just, I think what they're saying is like, you have to find a way to create value for yourself and you can get in the mix.
Help us.
But in a weird way, you kind of got to be organic about it. Like, say what you want about Bryson. He got big for golf, right? And has created this caricature
Brooks got
around it.
All the off-the-course stuff that Brooks brought came after Brooks became really good at golf, right? Brooks wasn't going on all the golf podcasts and doing his
Michelob Ultra wasn't giving him money.
How he acted in the press conferences, no one cared about.
Yeah.
Till he was good. So
I think the best way to do it is be good. I say this all the time.
I think this is incentivizing the guys who are rich anyway, and this is what it's about, John. It's about incentivizing your stars who are going to be really rich because of what they make. They could just play golf, go home, never do one IG post, never appear on anybody's YouTube pod. It's about incentivizing those. To me, it's about incentivizing those guys. It's about because just looking at last year's, I bet the FedEx Cup points. I bet this heavily weights your best players are naturally going to be in the mix.
Of course, yeah.
So it's about incentivizing your Mike Trouts to just like do some other crazy stuff.
Do you think if I want to DM like Bryson, be like, hey, bro, you want to come on our show? And then just hashtag $8 million bonus?
Hashtag player impact.
Hashtag Q rating.
Player impact program. Hashtag, what's this other one that was funny? Meltwater mentions. We'll get you a lot of meltwater mentions.
I have a hard time with, and I know a lot of people sell like impressions and all. It's like are you actually like just tweeting something out? What does that actually mean? Or even Instagram video? Like, does it incentivize me to buy followers?
Yeah.
Because if I was a guy making a couple $1 million, like, hey, you want to put $10,000? Can we buy 2 million followers?
I think it incentivizes you to just put yourself out there a little more. I think it just incentivizes you to put yourself out there a little more. All right. Anything else you want to get to? Hit a few YouTube comments here for the people that have been hanging out with us. We appreciate you. Daniel asked, where did this go? Daniel said, can you guys please tweet out when you go live? No, sometimes we might, but hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then hit the bell that tells you when we're live. That's the key. Hit the bell. The comments as we were talking, as you might imagine, John, just popping off with nothing but Mac Jones.
Golfer's going to be at Googling their names over and over.
That was a good one. TWM06. Is that Tiger Woods, you think? TW?
I hope.
Let's see what else we got here. Patrick says if Alex was 30 and healthy, Gruden would do anything to have him as his QB. He'd be perfect for Gruden. See, I don't know. I think John wants a little more of what Derek brought this year. What's a little more downfield playmaking? What do you think?
Well, I think Derek has a lot of Alex, kind of a stronger armed Alex in his game. Like, I think Derek brings you what you'd get in Alex. Right? I don't think it'd be that much different. Derek doesn't turn the ball over anymore. Derek kind of became Alex as a player.
But I still think with some of the upside potential.
Yeah.
Just to make some throws.
Alex, physical talent, he was probably a better runner than Derek. He's bigger. Alex is big, tall. But his arm had limitations. Like, you would not draft Henry Ruggs 12 if Alex Smith was your quarterback, right?
Yeah. God, sorry, I'm making these so big. They're not fitting on your pages?
That's fine.
I'll figure out how to make them smaller next time. Thoughts on Jordan? This is from Runaway Turtle. Thoughts on Jordan Reed retiring? I was constantly looking forward to seeing him and Kittle on the field at the same time. Yeah. I mean, he got a few flashes last year, John.
Guy, he's a big-time talent. I mean, he's a guy in the vein of Alden, but with injuries, conduct, that you go, God, if he would have stayed healthy. I mean, he was kind of Aaron Hernandez-y. Like, there was just no...
From a skill standpoint.
Yeah, you just... How do you cover a guy that's 6'3", that can run like that, but who's thicker than a wide receiver, who's skilled like a wide receiver? Sad deal, man.
Raymond says, Justin Fields' games against Indiana and Northwestern are not the problem. Guys are expected to have bad games against some good defenses. The problem is he gets away with bad decision-making. So his point is not look at the games or the poor decision-making, more so Indiana came back to bite him. His point is he got away with it against worse teams, and that is not reflected in the numbers.
That's fair. I mean, in basketball, what do they say? Good offense beats good defense. I think historically in the NFL, might be changing a little bit. Good defense can beat good offense, right? Like, you can slow down Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. My question, though, is, whenever I argue with someone over Justin Fields, like, we can't improve that. Like, is that not an improvable skill? Like Josh Allen, we saw it with Josh Allen. We saw some of it with Justin Herbert. Like, also, to argue Mac Jones, McCorkle, like, the number one thing Tua was like, knows his reads. Tua, he can go 1 to 5 in the blink of an eye. It's like, well, I watched him in the NFL. It looked like is he processing his head because the ball ain't going where he's processing. So I think
also
sometimes
1
we
to
can
5.
overvalue
Do you have time to get to 5? Is your arm strong enough to get it to 5?
Yeah, I mean, were you going 1 to 5 at Alabama because you basically went from Waddle over to Judy with eating a sandwich back there behind the line of scrimmage? Do you think? I mean, what can't be coached up in the NFL?
Toughness. Well, I shouldn't say can't, but that's one thing that you'd be like the list of things that you'd be most.
I think you can improve toughness if you have some innate toughness in you.
Well, yeah.
I think you can improve
toughness in you,
anything
then
if you start.
That's
with
why I
something.
don't want to say can't. I don't want to say. But let's go reverse. The things that concern you the most that you can't fix them. Okay.
Bad guy.
Bad guy, desire. Just like, do you want to be good at this? Do you care? Do you love it, or are you just here because you're good at it and it was easy?
Yeah.
These are things that are hard to measure.
Well, that's the thing with like Tua, for example, and I think Trevor Lawrence fits under that bill. You would say, and Trevor Lawrence has admitted this, it's like I don't have a huge chip on my shoulder. Like, why would I? I was the number one overall player. I went to Clemson. I dominated. Like, where's my chip?
Some
I'm going to
guys
go
don't need
number
a
one.
chip, right?
At least, does that bother you when a guy says, I don't have a chip? Life's been pretty good?
It doesn't bother me if a guy says I don't have a chip, because I don't think everybody motivates themselves the same way. It bothers me if he just is like, I don't really, I'll try it. I'll give it a shot. Like if he's passive about being good at it, right? Some people work out, John. Some people work out, get jacked, not because they're trying to show somebody that they're not the fat kid that they used to be, right? They're good at it. They enjoy it. They do it.
Yeah.
Some people get good at stuff not because they're trying to prove somebody else wrong. So not having a chip doesn't mean necessarily you can't be great.
I would say in athletics, there are walks of life where that's probably unhealthy. I'd say pretty consistently athletic, you're trying to prove someone, aka the opponent, aka a coach, aka the guy
I don't think
going
for a
against.
second it's unhealthy.
It is part of it.
I don't think it's unhealthy in sports.
I don't think it is either. My overall point, though, I'm not out by any means on Trevor Lawrence. I would be pretty skeptical just that this is going to go as like Luck did not. No one ever questioned like Luck's. They questioned because he was so intelligent. The reason he quit is his body, and he admitted like I can't do the rehab anymore. And it was 3 separate major injuries. If Luck had just had a couple minor like an ankle tweak or whatever. Don't you think he's still probably playing?
Yeah, I don't think he would have retired when he did. I don't think so at all. Because I thought he loved playing. He played like there's no indication that Andrew Luck didn't love football. In fact, he kept trying to come back because he loved football. So, we just had a few. Robert, who was here for the first live show. Thank you, Robert. Good to have you. A bunch of other people jumped in on that, maybe their first live stream. So good to have everybody on the live stream. If you were hanging out in the YouTube, we appreciate if you're listening to this podcast, get your orders in. Depending on when you listen to it, hopefully there's some hats left. Orders have already begun to come in just from the live stream, so we will attend to those as we can. This is our first merch sale, so we'll try to do it as efficiently as possible.
Don Haberman.
It's all John's idea. All right. Good pod, everybody. Thanks for hanging.